What is up, people? This is your RJ Karthik coming to you from M Square, and we got a fire attribution episode today. M Square founder Madan Bharadwaj has Aman Khanna here to discuss the realest parts of implementing attribution. Aman, current co-founder of Profit Wheel, a company bringing marketing technology to advertising media outlets, has worked on tons of projects with the best CMOs in the industry. One of which being Dell, which is one of the biggest success stories in attribution globally. Sit back, relax, and grab some popcorn to absorb this attribution knowledge.
Let me introduce you to Aman. I've got a slide for the intro. Hold on, let me see if we can bring it up. So Aman's a good friend of mine. We're colleagues, worked together for many years, and then going back, I don't know, at this point, 15 years, something like that. And then he took a journey through ad tech, martech, advertising in his own journey. I think he spent a bunch of time in Yahoo, a bunch of time in Adelphic, ad network side. Then he came to Visual IQ, where he probably had the biggest book in the company for many years. Amazing clients, the clients that absolutely adore him. And he's been somebody I respect. In fact, there's a story that I tell him Aman about an insight that he gave me just in a casual conversation over coffee 15 years back that turned into the scenario planning tool at Visual IQ. And he's still upset that I haven't sent him a check for that. Smart guy, greatly respected, a lot of attribution expertise. I think specifically where I think we're going to learn a lot from him today is that I don't know how many projects you've managed, Aman. Is it 50 projects, 70 projects, 100 projects, attribution projects? I can't tell. But he's worked with great CMOs, some of the best CMOs in the industry, and he's helped them roll out attribution successfully in very complex organizations. You know, he rolled out attribution across Dell globally to I don't know how many markets, I don't know, 50 markets, something like that, to Japan and Asia and APAC and LATAM and whatnot. So very complex organizations and a rich experience helping manage complexity within organizations. I thought having him come in and share some experiences on who managed it well, which CMOs did, what are some of the learnings, and as folks who are going into the industry to roll out the next generation of attribution technology and approach, what are some things we can learn from his experience that we can carry with us, right? How did I do, Aman? Did I miss anything? How would you describe yourself?
No, I don't believe I like I said, I don't warrant most of the praise that he's thrown at me. It's not true. But the first place we met was where I started my career at iProspect, which is where at Kara is where Madan worked. And it is true, he asked me for feedback on a particular search engine bidder, and I told him this bidder is useless unless you can tell me at various points in the marketplace, i.e. at different CPAs, what volume would I get? How would I know that simple conversation would lead to almost a $200 million sale of a company, a product that he designed? So yeah, I'm still stiffed a lot of money for that. But that said, what he didn't give via check, he gives me via intelligence. So I duly respect all the gray matter he's imparted on me. It's not been a one-way street.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, so let's. I mean, this is a two-way Q&A, guys. Please stop me if you have questions for them. Please have at it. So, generally speaking, I mean, how are CMOs navigating attribution today? Are they doing it well, not well? What's your POV on that?
So let's first begin with the birth of attribution back in the day when cookies were alive and well, and Madan, you gave birth to a product that was designing how a user's various touch points were captured in cookie data, and that cookie data doesn't exist anymore. So all of a sudden, there's a void in what used to be previously known as multi-touch attribution. Now is just known as, well, your best guess attribution or just click-based attribution. So we've traversed that journey, and I think most smart CMOs, they're realizing that if I cannot track impressions, what is my next best bet? How can I get a quicker cadence to what is called media mix modeling? And I'm sure everyone here is aware of that as well. Or they start to use quicker cadences like rule-based or potentially last touch or potentially incrementality-based output. So the smarter ones truly recognize that perfection is a dream that if I keep chasing, it's if MTA is that perfection, that dream that's been shattered. And as a result of it being shattered, what can they do potentially that's at par with without the headaches involving the data cleansing as well as the potential lack of data sources, especially that we know today that exist both in MMM and MTA. So it's a combination of the two. But feel free to ask specific questions. I quit Visual IQ so I can answer very specifically if you want to know about tech and computing or tax-based clients, or potentially if you're interested in travel-based clients. Each one had a very different implementation, and each one had a very different unique need that they needed to get solved, and each one was a different journey, which is what I call attribution, a journey, and it's definitely not the destination.
So in your experience, Aman, is there a particular industry that's done attribution well, that's taken attribution, adopted it well? What would that be?
I think attribution, again, from the lens that I know, for the 7 years that I worked at Visual IQ Nielsen, I think the companies that do attribution really, really well are the finance and insurance and the tax sector. Anywhere where there's a high value customer to be had, they tend to want to know exactly what media stimulated them to actually do what they needed to do. Similarly, if you have high ticket items, like for example, the automobile sector has gone nuts with attribution. In fact, Nielsen alone had some of the biggest automobile OEMs that they called clients. They paid top dollar for getting attribution journeys for test drives to actual purchase of vehicle, etc. While that's they've implemented well, I think most of them think of attribution as a necessity, and I think those are the customers that tend to do well. The people that tend to have problems with it are the traditional slow movers. They're the ones that will take time, need lots of effort to implement a pixel on site. So that's my opinion. Again, feel free to double click into any of these.
Yeah, so insurance, is there a particular industry that really struggles with it? Would you mean say slow movers? Who are some examples there?
Oh, I mean, how much time do you have? We had a okay, I'll give you an example. We got a client called Dick's Sporting Goods. I'm sure most of you must be aware of that brand. And they wanted a similar. A lot of their sales were offline, as is the case with Walmart, with Target, and a bunch of these guys, right? Yeah. Now with Dick's Sporting Goods, the trouble was they wanted to match the offline converter to the online persona of the same individual, and they believed heavily in the offline onboarders such as LiveRamp, and they believe that if LiveRamp captures the online entity, they'll be able to map it back to an offline first-party ID or customer ID that Dick's Sporting Goods was generating. And when we looked at it from the outside, we're like, how are they going to do this? This seems like you're marrying two different universes that don't speak to one another. Yeah. The truth was, they had the best match rate in the history of Nielsen Visual IQ, which was a staggering 9%. That means 9%, and it was the best match rates in the history, and we were really proud of it. The client turned around and fired us and said, you're only matching 9% of my offline converters to online. We said, by industry benchmarks, we've surpassed what you've done. Sephora, on the other hand, was doing a first-party ID match, and they had close to a 30% match. Yeah. But what we realized was this is a player that wants online attribution for offline conversions. A problem that hasn't been solved. Similar problem for in-app conversions driven by desktop media stimulation. Again, a problem not yet solved. So when you look at all of the disparate ID matching that you need to join to create this bubble of attribution that you match back to all the stimuli that preceded it. I mean, I have horror stories that I can tell you about failed clients. That includes lead generators for a credit card company, similar offline retailers. Name the industry, and I'll probably tell you one horror story associated with it in which attribution didn't exactly succeed. And I have many scars, lost a lot of hair as a result of it.
Yeah, it's okay. I can totally see how you can go on, write a book about that. Now, is there, so when you see the successful CMOs, let's talk about the ones who are successful, who are doing a good job rolling out attribution, having success with it, moving organizations forward. What is the conversation with the CFO that they're having that is actually, are they having a successful CFO conversation? Are they even part of it? How would you characterize that?
Most influential CMOs have the ear of the CFO and the CMO, which is the reason why especially in the enterprise market, if the CMO is making a decision in isolation that doesn't have an ROI associated with a project, funding it regularly, is not going to be met with a smile with the CFO. Tax client comes to mind now in the insurance sector. This particular CMO, she's by far one of my favorite, and I think Madan, I've spoken volumes of her to you. She comes to mind because she ran one of the largest, and I don't want to name the brand, but you know the brand. It's one of the largest tax returners of this country. They had a very interesting problem. They ran media only for 3 months. That's permissible by law. What she did was very interesting. She got all the partners together twice during the tax season. That included the ad serving team, the media buying team, the measurement team, the data onboarding, like you name it. Anyone that touched marketing was invited twice a year in the tax season to an on-site where we would brainstorm and see what's going well during the 2 peaks that occur in the tax season. In the same conversation, in the same meeting of the families, the CFO and CEO were invited. These guys would make a special appearance and they would see the progress that this team has made, would need to show numbers of how they're doing tax season over tax season, how they've taken market share from said competitors, what has that done to their bottom line, how has media become either more cheaper or expensive, and how we combating that by way of augmenting attribution along with ads. How are all of these various players that you finance person are paying top dollar for, how are they actually helping us drive more customers and generate more revenue? Because at the end of the day, that's what finance cares about. This was a very interesting play. It was also the most successful way in which we would get the buy-in. So if we ever needed to present a big add-on, upsell, etc., that was the avenue I used, and it worked.
Amazing. I was part of that execution for a couple of years. I always had a great respect for her as well. If you had to abstract the goodness there, if you had to abstract some takeaways, some learnings, how would you put that together?
I think attribution as a project or as a study needs very strong leadership. Where I've seen attribution fail is when the intent behind attribution was always questionable. Like, for example, someone trying to match offline data with online data using an ID and using attribution as an excuse is a short failure. There's no way that's going to succeed. Where we see attribution successful is when everybody works in concert with one another. This particular CMO comes to mind, as does Dell and a bunch of these guys, where they realize, look, guys, today our way of using last touch measurement or rules-based measurement or any of these archaic methodologies, they're only going to do more of what we're doing, and that's the definition of insanity, because it's not working. We're losing market share. We're not in a position where we can react quickly to the marketplace. The competition's eating our lunch when it comes to new product modules that we offer or our existing bread and butter. So with Dell, this was actually a huge problem. Change management was something that required governance from the C-suite, and until you get buy-in there, and leadership says, we are doing this, and if you do not want to do this, please leave, or something as strong, right? Unfortunately, that also could mean that's the end of the vendor, because you need strong leadership on the vendor side to say, yes, we will match you when it comes to our level of commitment, the number of on-sites you need, the amount of travel that was needed, the amount of decks, etc., consulting services, because a lot of this is out of the box. This isn't something you can productize.
Right. This is an incredibly important point you just made, right? It's with all the technology that you and I have been part of in the evolution of attribution, there is still a fair amount of consulting services and high touch required to see these projects succeed. It's not at a place where you can just drop a piece of technology and it'll kind of take off and fly. Is it fair to say that, or am I?
More than fair to say that. The first time we tested multi-touch attribution within the walls of Dell, it was in their small business segment. It was the entire month of March. I remember this very clearly. It was 2016. In 2016, what we decided to do was all of small business at Dell across every single media funnel stage would use multi-touch attribution numbers out of Visual IQ, and they would do so for an entire month. And given that in the past 4 or 5 years, March, which has 31 days, and Feb, which has 28 days, has always outperformed Feb. So when we decided to go ahead and implement this as the first test to test out the validity of multi-touch attribution or attribution within all of small business, which of course was a great idea. Now that I look back at it, I want to shoot myself. We found that there was a loss of $6 million when we actually compare total revenue numbers. So as a result, the client could have turned around and said, you're fired because your attribution numbers resulted in $6 million less in revenue compared to Feb, which has 3 days less than, granted it was a leap year, so you had 2 days less, but we were at a loss. So now what we had to do was build these archaic Excel-based regression models to say, actually, if you hadn't used multi-touch attribution, you'd have lost 12 million. So here's the truth. Your loss of 6 million is actually a gain of 6 million.
Right.
And everyone's left scratching their head saying, and none of this can be productized. Right?
That's right. So there's an amount of interpretation and consulting, high-end consulting services required to see it successful, right? And vendors have to have the commitment to serve their clients for this to actually work is the key takeaway. Gail, Gail's a potential, she has been my client at other places, right? Would you agree, disagree? How would you react to that?
In terms of specifically from like a client perspective?
Yes, from a client perspective, do you see that when you're rolling out an attribution solution, your vendor could be an agency, could be a technology platform, there's a certain amount of services required. That's kind of what Aman's kind of pointing out. I would agree. I mean, as a client, would you agree? How would you react?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of, because especially, in recent years, I feel like clients are going to feel more kind of a little bit confused than ever about, so they're looking for the broad breadth of expertise and, across kind of all these different facets and everything like that. So I think a lot of places have, in the past, they've fallen victim to the, we picked, this vendor who was, the expert in this one particular thing, but they couldn't help us get this global view of it. And so I think a lot of places, a lot of clients are taking a very careful tack with how they approach vendors and how they're going to basically operate across, giving full visibility to things.
Right. Any questions for Aman on this topic, guys? Okay. Aman, any final thoughts? Anything that you leave us with?
I'd love to, anytime anyone wants to get in touch with me, open to a policy. But more importantly, I think the study of attribution is just as important as the implementation of it. So what I think you guys are learning is actually fantastic. I'd love to get short notes, and if one day I have the time, I'd love to listen to Professor Madan himself. But I think the piece that I'll leave you with is every project, especially attribution, is looked at with a demon with 3 heads. Each of those heads are very different, difficult to circumnavigate, but each head is different for each client. I have dealt with so many clients that treat attribution sometimes as an adopted stepchild. Some of them have chosen to look at it as the shiny new object that they want to bring to the boardroom. Some of them have decided to think that this is going to help solve for everything. And some of them the right ones have just said, this is incrementally better than what I had. That's right. Gotta look for the last one. I say this because there is no product, no service on earth that can automatically solve for everything. It has to be incrementally better. And the way I look at it is, imagine if you are in the wild and you are trying to run from a bear, and the bear is chasing a group of people. You don't have to be the fastest. You have to be one faster than the slowest.
Yeah, Ellen, do you have a question?
Go ahead.
Just really like that Aman just brought up expectations as a follow-up to bringing up the C-suite, because attribution it's an art and a science, and it's not a panacea. It's not going to all of a sudden, change the whole trajectory. It depends upon the maturity of the organization. And last week we talked about the decision matrix. And the answer is not always, run an experiment or rely on your modeling or rely on your surveying, right? There's there's looking for consistencies and trying to find the right path.
That's right. Triangulating on the right decision, right? The perfect's the enemy of the good. I think Aman said that at the very beginning, right? Trying to chase for the perfect answer. I mean, there is no perfect answer, right? You're looking for a better answer that allows you to make a much better decision with how you invest your dollars. If you can get there, that's a win, as opposed to looking for perfection, right? I think enough people have said that now. It's now out there as wisdom that people seem to kind of like buy as market wisdom, but not always easy, I guess.
Right, but when you bring the C-suite in, the expectations have to be communicated, I guess is my point. So that, because they're not necessarily part of understanding attribution. They haven't gone through all these learning modules, right? They're looking for something that's gonna make the numbers look better.
Actually, I have a quick snippet story to share with Ellen, specifically because you just reminded me of a happy trigger moment when it comes to attribution. The client was Equifax, and what you said resonated really well. And after long, arduous negotiations, they decided to go ahead and do attribution with us. And Equifax is Atlanta-based, Southern people, very, very nice. We were invited to a dinner beforehand with the entire attribution team, in which the financial controller and CFO were also present. They asked us the rudimentary questions. The next day, we had a 3.5-hour workshop in which every single person that touched marketing, advertising, and including finance was present in the room. A bottle of champagne was placed in front of each of their desks, next to which was a tag. And each person was to write on that tag the goal, which was, how do we save $1.5 million by the end of the year? So everyone had a common goal. 2, what were you, as the one individual contributor to the Equifax advertising domain? They spent around $35 million in digital advertising at that time. How are you going to help save that $1.5 million? And it began with the head of advertising, the C-suite in the room, that said, I will break all barriers and make sure no one has any obstacles in order to meet this goal. I will approve any travel. I will, all of the rudimentary bureaucracy that comes with it. And we planted that beforehand, only to say, hey, if you want this to be successful, if all of us have to be aligned towards one goal, we all have to be in that. And I've used this actually in many other conversations. It started at Equifax. Now, of course, don't bring a bottle of champagne everywhere you go. And investing in 30 bottles of champagne, that was also another headache. But imagine what that did at the end of those 3.5 hours. We also decided, once the year is over, we're going to drink that bland champagne because it's been rotting on our desks for a year. And that placard where we said, this is what we're going to do. It's a very simple way of, Ellen, what you just described. Hey, how do you get the C-suite aligned with what should be the common goal at the end of this? And how can we decide and pre-wire everyone to that common goal? It worked really well. Equifax became one of the largest clients of Nielsen, almost acquired them.
Awesome. That's amazing. It's a great story. Just like create momentum for the project and common sort of like a mandate and a purpose for the team. There was a question from somebody.
From Karthik, yeah. And Karthik's a really good question. In terms of specific industries, I find that anywhere where you have a D2C play, where attribution kind of falls very quickly, is when you don't have a KPI. So think branded media, think B2B. All of those, from a pure play KPI perspective, unless of course you're doing incrementality testing, failed in the multi-touch attribution world, which is the reason why, even though I was intimate with the org of Dell, I could never pierce the EMC or the B2B sector, the commercial sector. And for this exact reason, it's that they don't have a conversion event. They just blindly spray and pray impressions all over the globe. And for that reason, it becomes very difficult to work with them. However, on a D2C play, where you are looking at large scales of people, and I'll give you simple examples. Wouldn't you want to know what media drove people to return your product versus those that abandoned cart versus those that actually purchased your product? Each of these will have a different attribution journey. And from that, you can learn a lot. So I would focus on the D2C play, focus on the ones that have a higher customer lifetime value.
Awesome.
So there you have it, people. Awesome insights in that conversation. So the pros of attribution and incrementality testing are pretty clear, right? Finding out how much ROI your media is specifically driving, finding out details about your marketing efforts, and telling you what to change to really optimize your practice. But what I found especially interesting about that conversation was finding out when and why attribution efforts can actually fail. So Aman talks about this point in an example. He's talking about someone who is trying to match offline data with online data in regards to attributed conversions for their business. Right? These types of data are not one-to-one, they're not really compatible, and it's a problem the industry has been trying to figure out. But what this point drives home is that data, while it is awesome and can tell you lots of things about your business, it is limited. It's limited by the inputs you provide. It can only speak that language. So it's critical that your inputs are just accurate and also the correct ones so that you actually get a result that's valuable and that can help your client optimize their practice. Right? And I think there's no better way to really understand this than with a real life industry example. So a huge thank you to Aman for coming on and sharing this knowledge with us. And I'll catch you guys in the next episode. You don't want to miss it.